Hi, and welcome to 10 Health Changes to Support Following Your Dreams. The reason that I've created this lecture is because, I'm very aware, certainly from my own experience, that when you are focused on following your dreams, you want as many variables to be right in your life so that you can start your journey on getting to where you want to go with regard to your dreams. And adjusting your health and following a few easy pointers to get your health right will certainly just allow you to get a little bit closer towards following your dreams. So a little bit about me. I started initially as a podiatrist. I have a degree in psychology and communications, certificates in kinesiology, healing modalities, exercise science, and sports restoration therapy. Also, health and nutrition. This was a qualification that I did through a UK university, and functional medicine, which is through the United States of America. So my sub-studies include detoxification, hormones and sexual health, insulin, stroke, and of course genetics. So when we're looking at following our dreams, what are the factors that are going to help us to achieve our dreams? So motivation is one of them. It's very hard to get to whatever we've dreamed if we're not motivated. Clarity is important because I think sometimes just being clear about what we want for our future and what we want to achieve is part way in getting there. Because if we have some vague idea about what our dream is, it's very difficult to get there. So clarity is important. Energy to do it, because if you're going to get there, but you don't have the energy to take the steps, of course, attaining your dreams is going to be very far away. Enthusiasm, this goes without saying. And I think as we get closer towards achieving our dreams, our enthusiasm builds. I think sometimes, especially if we've had a few hard knocks in life, sometimes our enthusiasm is a little bit flat. But as we start, it's almost like a snowball going down a hill. As we start moving in that direction and we reach our milestones and we start seeing that maybe our dream is not so far away, our enthusiasm builds. But to get there, we're going to need endurance because, of course, with all of our dreams and our goals, some goals are very imminently attainable. We can have a goal and we can achieve it soon. But many of our dreams are dreams for a future. And to get there requires feeling good about our body, feeling good in our mind, energy, and of course the enthusiasm and the motivation to go through those processes. And this requires endurance, and we need to be healthy to actually have endurance. So what do we need to get right to actually get to whatever we've dreamed? For a lot of people, these are the experiences of their life, and these experiences are actually blocking them from achieving their dreams. So one of them is brain fog. Because how do you get clarity? How do you even know what you want to dream if you have brain fog? Second one, poor motivation. So we may know what we want to achieve. We may have amazing dreams. We may journal and create these wonderful and satisfying stories of where we want to go. But to actually start that journey is very difficult for us because we have poor motivation. And poor motivation is very often got to do with what's going on in our brain. So in other words, it's got to do with our neurotransmitters. And the health of your neurotransmitters is a player in whether or not you're going to feel motivated. If we're depressed, then even just getting through the day is difficult. Going through the normal tasks that we have to do just to get up, go to work, see to our children, see to ourselves is difficult if we're depressed. And of course, anxiety is another one. If we're feeling very anxious, then we're so focused on our sensation of anxiety and what is causing the anxiety in our body that to even think further to getting to our dreams is really just not in our life plan for that moment. So part of being healthy is actually making sure that we don't have brain fog. We are motivated because our neurotransmitters are working well. We're not depressed and we don't have anxiety. Now, I have got some special gifts for you, but please stay to the end to find out what these gifts are. So what we're going to have a look at in this lecture, we're going to look at 5 don'ts and 5 do's that are going to help you wrap up your health so that you can then achieve your dreams. So the first don't is don't drink your calories. I think very often we mindlessly order cool drinks. We're thirsty, so we'll say, I'll have a Coke, please. Or, we'll have a fruit juice, and we believe, okay, if I have a fruit juice that I'm being healthy. But I think what we don't realize is that if you buy a can, for example, you buy a can of Coca-Cola or any of those cool drinks, there's approximately 9 teaspoons of sugar in 1 can of cool drink. Now, we would never go to a fast food place and eat 9 of those little packets of sugar. It would be unheard of. And yet we don't realize that we're drinking easily 9 teaspoons of sugar as we eat our food if we have a can of cool drink. And even though we very often think that fruit juice is as healthy, or fruit juice is healthier, there's as much sugar in fruit juice as there is in one of these cans of cool drink. Now the problem is calories that we have in these fruit juices, they predispose us towards obesity and insulin resistance. And that is because when you're having such a hit of sugar, the body has to release insulin, because insulin is the hormone that carries the sugar into the cell so the body can actually utilize that sugar. Now, if you are constantly flooding your body with very, very high quantities of sugar, your body then is releasing very high quantities of insulin. And eventually what happens is that the receptor sites on the cells say, no more. We are now going to close the doors to insulin. And then, of course, the body can't carry that sugar into the cells because the cells have closed the door to insulin. And insulin is like the bus that carries the sugar into the cells. And the calorie intake that we are adding just by drinking our calories obviously contributes towards obesity as well. Insulin really, just to go back to insulin a little bit, insulin and a constant flood of insulin is probably one of the most deleterious hormones that our body produces when it produces it in excess. It's life-saving in required quantities, but it causes a huge number of health problems when you flood your body with too much sugar and your body has to produce too much insulin. I do have other lectures specifically on this, so I'm just touching on it in this to give you an overview. If you're wanting to find out more about it, then we can obviously address it through other lectures. The other thing with calories is that what happens in the cans is that they use high fructose corn syrup, because high fructose corn syrup is actually cheaper than sugar. But the problem with fructose, we think, fructose is fruit sugar. Well, fructose, in actual fact, this one is made from corn, and they use a lot of chemicals in actual fact to extract the fructose from the corn. But fructose needs to be metabolized by the liver. So it causes a lot of liver damage if you are constantly exposing your body to fructose. In fact, it causes a condition called NAFLD, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And NAFLD is really pockets of fat in your liver that is brought about from a very high intake of fructose. Now, the second one I've put on the back of the first one, because if we can accept, all right, I'm not going to have those cans because I know sugar is very bad for me, I'll just have a diet cola instead. It is not more healthy to swap your regular sugar-laden cool drinks or cans with diet cans. And the reason for this is the aspartame and the artificial sweeteners that they add to these sort of Coke Lights and other sugar-free drinks. There is an association, if you're having high quantities of this, with cancer. The second thing is that our neurotransmitters, now our neurotransmitters are basically a chemical that our own nerves secrete to allow the nerve impulse to work properly. I won't go into it in too much detail, but suffice to say, we want our neurotransmitters to work properly. Now, we have lots of different neurotransmitters and they create different effects in our nerves. So, for example, certain neurotransmitters are very calming. So, GABA, for example, is a neurotransmitter that actually calms our nerves down. Adrenaline is a neurotransmitter that gives us motivation and go. Serotonin, I think we all know that one. That's a neurotransmitter that gives us a happy feeling. But there's another neurotransmitter called aspartame. Now, aspartame is in diet drinks. And what it does is it works like a neurotransmitter and it overexcites the nerve. And if you were to imagine you're sitting in your car and your car's not going anywhere, so in other words, the clutch is out, but you're putting your foot on the accelerator and you're just revving your car. This is what happens with our neurons. When we have a lot of very excitatory neurotransmitters, then we're basically burning our nerves out. So if you're drinking a lot of diet drinks, you really are. You're burning your nerves out because they cause this excitatory effect in our neurotransmitters and in our nerves. So if you're going to swap, don't swap to diet drinks. It's really not healthier. Point number 3, don't have a carbohydrate breakfast. So I've spoken about insulin, but what happens is that when you wake up in the morning and you have a carbohydrate breakfast, you immediately spike your insulin. Now the problem with this is, and I'm sure you've found that this is your experience as well, if you're having a high carbohydrate breakfast, so for example, if you're having the typical breakfast like cereals and muffins and a piece of toast and toast and honey, for example, they immediately spike your insulin and then you get this crash about 2 hours later. So I'm sure your experience has also been you have your breakfast and you can have quite a lot of breakfast, but 2 hours later, you're absolutely starving again. And then very often we have a cup of tea and we have another carbohydrate. So we have a muffin or we have a biscuit. We spike our insulin again. So this really does cause long-term health problems in the body. The second thing is that the high carbohydrate breakfasts are very often very low in nutrients. So unless you're having a bowl of vegetables and broccoli for breakfast, which we just don't, the cereals, the mueslis, all of these are very low in nutrients. And the other thing is, well, we think muesli is healthy. Muesli is not healthy at all. If you have a look, unless you're making it at home, muesli, if you look at the back and you look at the ingredients and you work out how much sugar there is in muesli, very often a bowl of muesli's got about 4 teaspoons of sugar. And then on top of that, we might add some yogurt, and just for our breakfast, we're having 4 to 6 teaspoons of sugar. And that's not counting what we actually add to maybe our cup of coffee. So it spikes your insulin. It's very high in sugar. It's very low in nutrients. And we're generally hungry again in 2 hours. And then we want to eat again. So I'm going to talk about what you should have for breakfast a little bit later. But point number 4, don't eat 5 to 6 small meals a day. Now, very often we are told, especially if we're wanting to lose weight or we go to a dietitian and we are getting sugar variants and they say eat 5 to 6 small meals a day. I disagree with this completely because insulin is a big problem in the body. Insulin causes insulin resistance. It causes diabetes. And of course it leads to type 2 diabetes as well. So when you're eating 5 small meals a day, you're actually exposing your body 5 to 6 times in a day to a spike in insulin. Because what happens, and this is appropriate for the body, when we eat, the body senses that there's now glucose in the blood, and the pancreas secretes insulin. And this is important because without insulin, the body cannot actually take the glucose that we've just consumed into the cell where the body can use it to produce our energy. So we do need insulin, but we need an appropriate amount of insulin. If we're constantly flooded with insulin, it's a problem because insulin is a hormone, it's a messenger, and it tells the body to store energy. That's its job. That's the message that insulin gives the body, store energy. So if you are constantly eating throughout the day, 5 small meals, or you're grazing throughout the day, your pancreas is secreting insulin for the whole day. And that message to your body is store energy, store energy, store energy. So for example, if you go to a gym and you've got your energy drink and you are running on the treadmill and you're sipping your energy drink, as long as your body is exposed to that sugar, your body's going to be producing insulin, and the message to your body is going to be store energy. So what we have to do is that we have to give our body a break from insulin, because when we give our body a break from insulin, so 4 to 5 hours where there's no insulin, the body then produces a hormone called glucagon, and glucagon is our fat burning hormone. Glucagon is the messenger that tells our body to burn fat. But the pancreas doesn't secrete insulin and glucagon at the same time. It can only choose one or the other. So even if you're eating 5 healthy meals in a day, as long as you're eating all the time and your body never has a chance for that insulin to deplete so that the body can produce glucagon, you are giving your body the message: store energy, store energy, store energy. You will never lose weight and you will predispose to insulin resistance. So point number 5 is just on the back of point number 4, which is don't eat 5 small meals. So it makes sense then also to not snack. So even, for example, if you think, I'll just have that little apple in between your meals. As soon as you eat even a tiny snack, your body is going to produce insulin. And then your body produces so much that your cells become insulin resistant. And you just don't want to go down that path. So really what we need to do is that we need to make sure that in between our meals, there's 4 to 5 hours where we're not eating at all, not even licking the spoon of the sauce that you're making. So nothing at all passes your lips with the exception of water, herbal teas, and black coffee. Because remember, even milk has got milk sugar. So it's got galactose, and galactose, of course, is going to spike your insulin because it's a milk sugar. It's basically a carbohydrate. So even if you have your coffee and you have a little bit of milk in your coffee, you're going to effectively be giving your body a little snack, and your body's going to produce insulin. And then your levels of insulin, even though they might go up and down a little bit, really your body then has leveled out with insulin, and there's insulin in your body the whole time, in your blood the whole time, and the message to your body is store energy and not lose energy. So don't snack at all. And the worst possible snack you can have is that one that we love, which is that little biscuit or that rusk or a little snack just before we go to bed. That is probably the most deleterious habit that we can try and break, because it has far-reaching impacts in terms of our health. All right, so let's move away from the don'ts and let's look at the do's. So these are wonderful habits to start. The first one is to eat a protein-based breakfast. So as we move away from the carb-based breakfast, we're going to add a protein-based breakfast. And the reason that this is important is because at night, our body is repairing. So we're exposed to various damaging elements in our day, and at night our body uses the sleep time to repair. And to repair any damage in our body needs amino acids, so it needs protein. So when we have protein for breakfast, it allows the body to replenish the amino acids it used during the repair process at night. The second thing is that our cortisol, and this helps us get up and go in the morning, it's a hormone. We have our greatest spike of cortisol first thing in the morning. So sort of around about 8:30 is the highest spike of cortisol. And cortisol helps us go, get up, go. The other thing with cortisol, it's an anti-inflammatory. And we want our body to be exposed to anti-inflammatory because it helps to cool the inflammatory process that arises due to whatever variables and unhealthy exposures we might have. And we all have them. So in the morning, our cortisol spike is its highest, and for our body to make cortisol needs protein. So having a protein-based breakfast helps that. The third thing is, I've spoken about the neurotransmitters in the brain. For us to be able to create neurotransmitters that give us motivation. So for example, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that gives us motivation and satisfaction. Our body needs to synthesize those neurotransmitters, and they're brain chemicals, and they are essential for our brain health. Our body needs amino acids to synthesize the neurotransmitters. So you need to give the body the protein that it needs. And the last thing is that when you have protein for breakfast, it slows that insulin spike. So I've spoken about all the problem effects that insulin has got. And now what we want to do is that we want to make sure that we don't get a hit of insulin in the mornings. So if you have a protein-based breakfast, it's just to slow the insulin spike. And I will guarantee that if you have protein for breakfast, you will probably be able to go good 4 to 5 hours. Remember, I mentioned the no snacking until you eat lunch again without wanting to chew your own arm off, because it's the carbohydrate slump that you get 2 hours after a carbohydrate heavy meal that makes one starving, where you just think, I need to eat. And then in addition to that, you're not focused properly. You've got brain fog, you've got poor concentration. We get hangry. That's the combination between hungry and angry, where we just want to attack anybody who comes along and talks nicely to us. And eating protein for breakfast will help to give your body what it needs so you don't have those issues. So point number 7 is really eat protein and fat at every meal. And the reason that we do this, protein I've mentioned, we need those amino acids to be healthy. Our amino acids and our protein, they make all of our hormones, all of our enzymes. We think of protein in terms of sort of our muscle mass, but that is really just one requirement that our body needs protein for. We need it for our neurotransmitters, as I've mentioned. The other thing is protein and fat especially, our cell membranes are made up of fat. So the bag that actually holds the nucleus that's got our DNA material in, for example, that's made up of predominantly fats. So we need to eat fat to make sure that our cell membranes are healthy. Now the problem is we've been told that fat is unhealthy. And in fact, what's happening, the scientists are moving away from that thought entirely, because fats, for example, cholesterol, a lot of our brain, I stand corrected here, I think it's about 25% of our brain is made up of cholesterol, but cholesterol is also the precursor for our hormones. So our body needs cholesterol for our brain and to make our hormones. So for example, if you're on a statin, very often one of the side effects of statins, and I'll think about men in this issue, they because they get a drop off of cholesterol, their body can't produce enough testosterone, and then they get issues like erectile dysfunction. But for women as well, we need cholesterol to make our estrogens and our progesterone. So it's very important. Fat and protein slow the insulin spike. We've spoken about that. The other thing, fat and protein are what helps us to feel full. So we get that satisfaction from our food when we eat fat and protein that we don't get if we just have a high carbohydrate meal. But having said that, with regard to fats, while saturated fats are not the bugbear that everybody thinks they are, we don't want to eat saturated fats excessively. So some fats are very healthy. So for example, omega-3 is essential. It's an essential fatty acid, very important for our cell membrane. So we need to add fats in omega-3. The other thing is our fats carry our vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. So fats are important because these are fat-soluble vitamins. And all of those vitamins are very, very important, particularly as well for bone production, actually. So we need fats to carry those. And I just want to mention with vegetarians and vegans, it's, unless you're very diligent about eating vegetarian meals that are high in protein, so the beans and those sort of vegetarian foods, very often vegetarians don't get enough protein and vegans don't get enough protein. So it's important, if you are making health choices that are or moral choices that are vegetarian or vegan, that you pay very diligent attention to the amount of protein that you're actually getting in your diet, because otherwise your body simply cannot repair properly. It cannot make the hormones, it cannot make the enzymes that your body needs to be healthy. Now, point number 8 is to help us to detox. So unfortunately, it's most of the food that we're exposed to is covered in pesticides. The other thing is, the wheat that we have is sprayed with glyphosate. So they're sprayed with chemicals that our body then has to detoxify. We're also exposed to toxins just in normal daily activities. So, for example, obviously, you know the obvious one. So if you're a smoker or you are a drinker, then your body's exposed to toxins with regard to that. But, I live next to a highway. So, I'm exposed to all the fumes that come off cars, so just normal living, we're exposed to toxins that our body needs to take special care on detoxifying. Now, our liver and our kidneys really are our main organs of detoxification. Our liver takes up most of the load. So you remember I spoke about fructose and fatty liver, but our kidneys take some of the load from our liver. So we need to wash our kidneys out regularly. And that's why water is very important. So the other thing with water is if you're drinking water, it also helps one feel a little bit more full. Sometimes when we think we're hungry, in actual fact, we're thirsty. So drink half a glass of water regularly. The body copes better when you drink half a glass more often than when you drink 2 glasses less often. So what I generally recommend is that on your desk or wherever you are, you have a jug and a glass. You fill the glass to halfway. Every time you look at the glass, you drink that half a glass of water and then you refill immediately to halfway. That seems to create a momentum that promotes drinking water more often. But the other thing is, please be careful of where you get your water from. You want water to be filtered, and it is worth it to buy one of those clay filters and filter your water. Bought water, when you're buying water in plastic is it has BPS, and BPS is one of the toxins that you actually want to avoid because it produces what we call xenoestrogens. So it produces hormone-like substances in our body. We don't want that. You can just imagine if you're a male and you're exposed to these xenoestrogens. You don't want your body to be exposed to xenoestrogens. So drink filtered water and avoid plastic. Put your water in glass and drink it from glass. And the other thing with water, obviously it helps keep you regular, so it cleans out the bowel, because if you're constipated, what happens is that when you clear out your bowel, your feces actually holds your toxins and it allows your body to release the toxins. If you are constipated and your feces is holding the toxins in your bowel, it's recycling back into your system. So the more water you drink, the more the body is able to actually release those toxins, because of course then you're not constipated and you're washing out your kidneys as well. Point number 9 is to just take a moment. Stress is a player in very many of the non-communicable diseases. So in other words, heart attack and Alzheimer's and even cancer. So we want to reduce our stress. The other thing with stress is that when we stress, our body produces cortisol. Now, if you have chronic stress, the body produces cortisol and adrenaline to deal with the chronic stress. And when we have stress, the body looks at stress as a potential where it needs to we call it the fight or flight response, where the body either needs to turn and attack or defend itself, or it needs to run away. So what happens is that when the body releases cortisol triggers the glycogen, which is the stored sugar in the liver and the muscles, to come out of the liver and the muscle into the blood, so that the body can then take that sugar into the cells where your energy is produced, because your body's not sure, do I need to defend myself or do I need to run away? So it needs an immediate fuel source, and the body uses cortisol to trigger that response. So if you're chronically stressed, it's almost as though your body's constantly pulling glucose from the stores so that your body can either defend itself or run. So you're having a snack without the pleasure of putting that snack in your mouth. So you want to keep your stress levels low so that your body doesn't produce cortisol and adrenaline. The other thing, remember, adrenaline is a neurotransmitter. So you want to create calm in your life so that you can calm your neurotransmitters down. And obviously for each of us, how we take that moment is going to be different. Maybe it might be a prayerful moment for you, or meditation, or even just sitting for a bit and doing nothing. Just let your brain do nothing to allow your body to cool. Certainly before a meal, to take a moment before a meal just helps your body ready itself and calm itself down so that you can digest. So we call it, there's fight or flight or rest and digest. The body doesn't do the two at the same time. We're in fight or flight, or we're in rest and digest. So when we are eating, or before we eat, we want to be in that process of rest and digest. And the last point is eat real food. So when you look at your plate must be filled with food that is actually food and not created in some factory. I mean, there's no doubt that a Weet-Bix does not look like real food. Weet-Bix, as far as I'm concerned, just looks like cardboard. So we want our food to be as close to what nature created as possible. And the reason for this is, for example, let's say you are eating pre-packaged foods or commercial foods, or you are eating takeaways. What we don't realize is commercial oils, for example, they reuse commercial oils sometimes for up to 2 weeks. And then because they get like a disgusting stickiness, and they're filthy dirty, they strain them and filter them and purify them, but they don't purify them in a clean way. They use chemicals to purify them. And we are then ingesting these chemicals when we are eating processed food. So best approach, your food must look like food, so it doesn't have any additives. Because for example, we don't realize that as far as the law is concerned, food manufacturers are required to itemize on their ingredients preservatives, but they're not required to itemize processes in producing that food. And we don't realize how many processes they use in producing that food. So, for example, if you buy lunch meat, or you buy polony, for example, there are so many chemicals in it because it needs to hold its texture. It needs to have a certain look, so it has a certain color. I mean, you look at polony's all the same color across the board. It needs to have a certain feel to it. It needs to have a gloss to it. All of these are chemicals that they've actually put in your food. It's not real food. So, and we think, oh, well, you know what, they're chemicals, they must have been passed for human consumption. Well, that is possibly true. They maybe have been passed for human consumption, but nonetheless, your body still has to detoxify those chemicals. So, for example, like all the E's, when you look at the back of something and it's got E25 and E7 and E9, these affect your neurotransmitters. So, if you are struggling with brain fog or poor concentration, or anxiety is a very big one that's associated with poor neurotransmitter function because of the E's. Very often, if you look at your food and you change the type of food that you're eating, and you're creating real food and you're eating real food, it helps your body to detoxify all those additives and commercial type chemicals so that you can feed your body properly. So my suggestion is, firstly, eat real food, and secondly, eat a rainbow. So when you look at your plate, have a little bit of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And it's wonderful when you've got children too. If you're shopping and you're in the fresh aisle, you can say to your children, go and find rainbows, because food is so colorful, and they can go, and it's a wonderful little exercise for them to create rainbow salads and rainbow foods and shop for rainbows. And then when you're eating rainbows as well. And of course, you know what? There is always a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So eat those rainbows for your health pot of gold. So the special gifts for anybody who's listened to this lecture all the way to the end. The first is, please email me, and the next slide has got my email address on, for me to give you a fridge chart. It's a gift. It's just an easy chart you can put on your fridge that you can go and look at when you're going to eat something. And you're going to think, is this good for me? Can I eat it? If it's in the good for you side, yes, go for it and eat lots of it. There's a moderate one in the middle. Maybe just don't go crazy with those. And then, of course, there's foods to avoid. So that's a gift to you. The second gift is, if you need a health consult, in other words, you are struggling with issues and you want to chat to me about it, just connect with me. The password is Jules and Tafadzwa. Just put that little password in, then I know that you've listened to this lecture, and you can then get 20% off your health consult. And the last health gift is a little booklet. It's the 10 tips for health support booklet. Again, email me and I will email those back to you with absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for listening. My name is Jules Ellen Rowland. As I said, my email address is health@livetoa100.co.za, and of course my website, you can go and have a look at that, livetoa100.co.za. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please respond with any questions, any chats, any comments. Love comments, love questions, love chats.